Hello and welcome to yet another video. Today I want to give you my initial opinion on the Prelude 2 project cards. I got my delivery roughly a week ago, but I have since been on vacation. Nevertheless, I played around 4 rounds of Prelude 2 so far, and of course I also had an extensive look on all of the cards in general. This won't be a completely scripted tier list, but again, my first initial impression on these cards, but I thought I would give you my insights on these cards, what I think of them in this more free format first, and then once I have more experience with all of the new content, once I've played a few more rounds, then I'll maybe do something like the rating base game card series with all of the Prelude 2 content. So today we will be looking at the Prelude 2 project cards, as well as the Prelude 2 promo project cards that came with the content when you ordered it on Kickstarter. I will make separate videos about the corporations and preludes as well. So let's hop straight in. First of all, we have a WG project or a WG project, World Government project. This one is one of my favorite new cards. I really enjoy it. And you might immediately notice why. Valley Trust is one of my favorite corporations, or maybe my favorite corporation, and World Government Project is very similar to that because it allows you to draw 3 prelude cards and then play one of them for free. You discard the rest. This whole ordeal costs 9 MC. It has an Earth tag, but, and this is the problem with the card, it requires that you are chairman. In most cases, this means you cannot play this in Gen 1, except you have that one project card. I don't really remember what it was called, where you can exchange the neutral chairman with your own. I will put it on screen right now. If you have that card, that will allow you to play a World Government Project in Gen 1, but it would be quite complicated. Even in Gen 2, this is still an amazing play. A prelude costs, or not costs, but a prelude on general is roughly worth 21 MC. This costs 9 plus 3 to play, so 12 in total. It is very luck dependent. You could draw 3 preludes that A, straight up suck, or B, don't fit in your game plan. And by the time you're playing this, your game plan might already be super strict. You might already be going for a rush, or you might already be going for an engine play. And if you then find a prelude that belongs to the other strategy, it doesn't really work for you. But it can even be good in the late game. There are preludes that are super good in the late game. Let's just think about donation, supply drop, even loan, which usually is one of my least favorite preludes. If you get that with World Government Project in the last gen, you would be super happy. But you can also get really bad ones, especially some of the new ones would be really bad, because there are some new preludes that offer actions and effects that just only make sense if you play them early on. For example, the one that works like Mars that would be really bad in the last gens, or a board of directors would be really bad in the last gens. I will put them on screen so you know what I'm talking about if you don't know the new cards that well yet. But yeah, I really think World Government Project is quite cool. I really enjoy this card. I don't think it's super strong. I think it's maybe like a C tier card. The requirement just sucks really badly, and it's also really luck dependent. But I enjoy it. Next up, we have Venus Trade Hub. This one is a mix between a Venus card and a Colonies card. It requires 2 Venus tags, has a Venus tag itself, has a space tag as well. It costs 12 MC to play, has a point, and when you trade, you gain 3 MC. So you need to play this relatively early on for it to pay back. Basically, after trading 5 times, and you can obviously trade immediately after playing this in the gen that you played it, it has paid back completely and made you a point for free, basically. If you have more than 1 fleet, this can be absolutely ridiculous because it can make you 6 MC per gen, as well as in the gen that you play it. But Usually you want to trade every gen anyways. If you cannot trade, you're usually on the back foot anyways. The requirement can suck though, because Venus cards usually are quite bad. The expansion made a lot to improve Venus cards, the Venus strategy in general. Introduced a few new cool Venus cards, but it's an okay card. It's maybe low B tier, it's maybe high C tier. It's less flashy than the last one, World Government Project, but it's if you're playing with colonies, you want to trade every gen anyways, and then it's just 3 MC per gen, as well as in the gen that you get it. So it's basically a 9 MC card instead of a 12 MC card, and comes with a point. So it's like, think of a quiet company, but 1 MC cheaper and comes with a point. Can be even stronger if you have 2 trade fleets, but has a kind of annoying requirement. Of course, it's quite nice if you want to go for Venophile, because it has a Venus tag and requires 2 Venus tags, so you already have 3 if you play this. So yeah, it's a good card. It's not the most flashy one, but let's get to the next one. Venus Shuttles. I tried this out on stream. At worst, so let's explain the card. It costs 9 MC plus 3 to buy, obviously. It has a Venus tag. It lets you add 2 floaters to any Venus card. This one cannot collect floaters, so you need another one to make use of these 2 floaters. And then it grants you an action that lets you spend 12 MC to raise Venus 1 step. This sounds quite pricey, because the standard project costs 15, and you have to pay 9 plus 3 to play this. But the action is the cost of the action is reduced by 1 MC for each Venus tag that you have. Because this comes with the Venus tag itself, the action never costs 12 MC, it always costs only 11 MC or less. So the action is 4 MC cheaper than an SP, and usually SPs are roughly 4 MC more expensive than what you would pay with a card. Just think about standard project Aquifer costing 18, while Subterranean Reservoir costs 11 plus 3, so 14. So that's a 4 MC difference. So this is definitely a fair price, but you have to factor in the cost of the card. Well, after 3 uses, basically it is now break even with an SP, because after 3 uses, that's 3 times 4 cheaper than an SP, and you paid 3, so 3 times 4 is 12, which is what you paid for the card. So after 3 uses, it's the same as if you had done the standard projects, but this is not factoring in the 2 floaters and the Venus tag, which both have value. This could be 2 points, or like a Venus step itself with something like forced precipitation. And this can get really crazy out of control if you have a lot of Venus tags. With something like MSI and Venus Governor and stuff like that, you can get a crazy amount of Venus tags relatively fast, and then this action suddenly costs maybe only 6 or 4 MC, and that would be insane. So this is definitely, in the right scenario, one of the best ways to increase Venus every gen. Usually these action cards that let you do that, so as I said, forced precipitation or extractor balloons, are really bad. But this one can actually be quite nice. I think in the game that I played, I had around 4 Venus tags and was using this, so the action only costs 8 MC. I thought that was kind of a fair price. I think this is an okay card. Again, maybe low B tier, high C tier. Can get crazy, can also be kind of underwhelming. But it's definitely an interesting card. Next up, we have Venus Orbital Survey. One of the more interesting cards. Again, helps out the Venus strategy a lot. It has itself a Venus tag, costs 18, has a space tag as well. And then you reveal the top 2 cards, and you take any Venus card in those 2 cards on hand for free, and the other cards you can buy. So if there are no Venus cards there, it's basically Inventor's Guild times 2. It costs double the amount, and it lets you real double the amount of cards, but you also have to pay double the amount if you want to buy both. But you can also buy just 1 or 0, so it's up to you. You can always take the Venus cards for free, and you should always do those, especially because the card doesn't even give you the choice. You have to take the Venus cards for free on hand, but it's only an upside. Even if you don't want to play those cards, you can just sell them for 1 MC. The thing is, let me just quickly check how many Venus tags there are. So this is without Prelude 2. Without Prelude 2, we have 32 project cards with a Venus tag out of 390. So this is less than 10%. So after 3 or 4 activation, you're not guaranteed to get a Venus. Obviously, you're not guaranteed. You're never guaranteed because it's all chances. But so basically every 10th card or every 11th card roughly, you should get a Venus tag. So you rarely will get cards for free. Prelude 2 did a little bit in increasing the percentage of Venus cards in the deck because, again, it did a lot for Venus. But still, maybe every 10th card you see will be a Venus tag, and you have to buy for all of the others. Still, you get to see a lot of cards, and that's really, really beneficial. No matter if you're going for Venus or for Jovians or for whatever. I think this is not the best card draw for Rush because the card itself is quite expensive, and buying the cards is also very expensive. But if you're going for Engine, this can be a really, really strong tool. It's basically double the amount of Inventor's Guild, kind of a bit like AI Central, because you see 2 cards per gen. Of course, much weaker because you have to buy them. But yeah, quite strong in my opinion. Yeah, again, maybe low B tier, high C tier. All of these cards so far are quite good, but not game breaking. But now we get to a really, really strong one in my opinion. Costs 30 MC, has a Venus tag and a space tag, comes with 2 points. So reminds me of asteroid mining, because there's a space and a planetary tag, 2 points and costs 30. But it does something completely different. First of all, it grants you 2 Venus bumps. 2 SP Venus cost 15. We established SPs are 4 MC more expensive than they should be. So the real value of this is more like 22. But then the 2 points make up for that. So we're already roughly at 30 MCO value. And then you get 4 MC back per colony that you own. This is a card that you have no problem with playing in a late game because it mainly provides you with points. Sure, the TR steps that you do also increase your economy a little bit, but you can play this in a last gen and be completely fine with that. And that means it combos very well with this one, because in a last gen you will have the highest amount of colonies you will ever have. If this was a card that increased your economy, then it will clash with this fact that you want to play it later. So everything on this card makes perfect sense. It's quite strong. Yeah, I think it's one of the better cards to get the bonus bump with on a Venus track. The one that, especially the one that grants you the extra 3R, because that's later on. And as I said, you want to play this later on. So yeah, pretty strong card. I would place it in A tier maybe. Again, a card that helps out the Venus strategy a lot because there are super strong cards like Stratospheric Birds or Venusian Animals that you want to increase the Venus for. And increasing the Venus can be painful because, especially in just Venus Next, a lot of the cards that let you do that are quite weak, but Venus Allies definitely is not so strong one. Another Venus card, Unexpected Application. They could have called this expansion also Venus 2, not only Prelude 2. Costs 4, is an event with a Venus tag. It requires you to discard a card, and then you get to terraform Venus 1 step. So basically, you could say this card costs 7 plus 3 to get a Venus bump, because a card in the draft costs 7. If you compare that with, what's it called? Water to Venus, which costs 9+3 for a Venus bump. That's already better for unexpected application. Of course, Water to Venus is a space event, this is a Venus event, so there's a trade-off there. I would say a space event is mostly better than a Venus event because of the fact that you can pay for it with titanium and the fact that it triggers optimum air braking and paladin shipping. But discarding a card is better than paying 3 MC extra, because often by tile placement, by activating certain colony bonuses, or by drawing cards with some blind card draw, you will find cards that are worthless to you and you would sell for 1 MC. And of course, selling a card for 1 MC also has the added bonus of stalling. But yeah, it's better than paying 3 extra MC, because often you get this card for free and you don't need it. And even in the cases where you don't get a card for free that you don't need and can just discard here, you can just buy one in a draft, and then it's truly just 3 MC, and this card is still a cheap Venus bump. So I think it's a pretty good card. Triggers media group, triggers all sorts of Venus bonuses. So yeah, it's a good card. I think this is mid to high B tier. It's not the biggest impact card, so the opportunity cost of picking this in the draft over something stronger or something just more impactful is definitely there and has to be considered. And that's why I wouldn't put it in A tier, but it's definitely a good card. Next up, we have Summit Logistics. This requires the Scientist, so it's a turmoil card. I think we had one already, right? No, we didn't. Okay. Summit Logistics. Building tech, space tech, costs 10 MC, requires the Scientists. Draws 2 cards and then grants 1 MC back for each Jovian, Earth, Venus tech, and colony that you own. So there's a problem with this card, and that's a lot of its value comes from these 2 card draw, because the only other value it has is the 2 tags and the chance that you could make this cash positive. Let's say you have discounts, or even if you don't have discounts, or you draw this for free or whatever, you could have an amount of Jovian, Earth, Venus tags, and colonies that would just make this card cash positive. And then playing this is a no-brainer. If the card isn't cash positive, you could still make an argument to play it if you want to just exchange steel and titanium for MC. That's also a reason to play this. And then the last reason to play this is card draw. The problem with this is that Scientists, if you place delegates in the Scientists, often you do that because you have a lot of science tags and want the MC back when the Scientists get in power. A lot of science tags often indicate you already have card draw, and the Scientists in power let you draw 3 cards for 10 MC. So what do you need more card draw for? That's the problem I have with this card. It's just a bit overkill. One good thing here is that Unity, the party Unity, often combos really well with the Scientists, because playing these Earth, Venus, and Jovian tags often combos well with an engine play, and science strategies obviously often combo well with an engine play as well. So if you're going for Unity and Scientists, like 1-gen Unity, 1-gen Scientist, then this card is quite nice for you, because you will have a lot of these tags. But still, don't think it's the most impactful card, not the strongest one. I would say this is a C tier card, and probably the weakest one we've seen so far. Maybe World Government Project is weaker, but I like that one more for sure. All right, let's get to the next one, which is Stratospheric Expedition. This one costs 12 MC. It comes with a Venus tag, a space tag, an event tag, grants a point, grants you 2 floaters. Obviously, you have to place them somewhere else because this is an event card and cannot accumulate floaters. And then you draw 2 Venus cards. So the expansion has a few of these cards that let you draw Venus cards specifically. I think it's 2 projects and a prelude. I could be wrong. But this is basically one of the cards that helps the Venus strategy the most. Because the problem with Venus, if you're playing, like A, of course, the cards are quite weak. And B, if you're playing with all expansions, the deck is so diluted, you will not find a lot of Venus cards. And you will need to find a lot of Venus cards to make them work. Stuff like Venus Governor, stuff like... I'll put a few cards on screen right now that only work really well if you have a lot of Venus cards. You need a lot of Venus cards, and if you're playing with all expansions, the deck is so large that you won't find them. And stuff like Stratospheric Expedition will just help you find them. You could still be underwhelmed by the cards you draw. As I said, the cards are quite weak. And especially if you're not going for a Venus strategy, then Stratospheric Expedition is just straight up bad. Because you would rather draw 2 random cards than 2 Venus cards. And the chance that you can make use of these floaters is also quite low. Of course, there are Jovian floater cards, but there are more Venus floater cards. And if you're not going for Venus, you will not have a use for them. But if you're going for Venus, this is quite nice. And it's definitely MSI's best friend. MSI and Celestic also will really love this card. For MSI, you will just find more cards to play. And Celestic, you will maybe find more floater cards that you can combo with your corporation. It's a space event that's nice for all the known reasons, but yeah, I like it. Maybe mid to low C tier. If you're going for Venus, it's much better though. A more simple card and definitely a stronger one is Sponsoring Nation. Costs 21 MC, has an Earth tag, requires 4 Earth tags. I think this is the first time that we have something like that. We have lower Earth tag requirements, but never 4. It grants you 3 TR and 2 delegates. You have to place these delegates in the same party. There are a few new cards that allow you to split your delegates, but usually if delegates come from one source, they have to go into one party. So you cannot split them. This is quite impactful and quite strong. So it's definitely a card in a draft that you have to think about. Do I want my opponent to get this? The requirement can be difficult to achieve, but Earth tags are quite strong. So you will often have 4 Earth tags. And also cards that let you place 2 delegates are really great because they maybe allow you to steal the party leader position or swing elections. So that's quite nice. And overall, is this card fairly priced? Well, think about a release of inert gases. How much does this card cost? Inert gases costs 14 plus 3. So 17 for 2 TR bumps. If we do plus 8.5, that's 25.5. So that's already more than Sponsoring Nation costs. And then you also get 2 delegates. Of course, release of inert gases is not that great. But yeah, I think this card is not super OP because it's a little bit more expensive, just a little bit less expensive than release of inert gases, but has this quite huge requirement. It gets you even more than that with the 2 delegates, which also have a lot of value. That's 10 MC more in value, and then it also allows you to do the 3 delegate play. So 2 delegates from here, and then another one that you buy in one go. So that's super useful. But yeah, it's not super OP. It's definitely quite strong. I would probably put it in B tier. But again, all the tiers I say today in today's video are just indications of where I would think these will go, not fixed. I will definitely need to have more experience with these cards first. Next up, and I think I should speed up a little bit, is Special Permit. Costs 5 MC. You can only play it if you have 2 delegates in the greens or the greens are in power. It's an event with the plant tag. We have that already in the form of harvest, for example. And it allows you to steal 4 plants. This is virus on crack. So virus allows you to destroy 5 plants, but this allows you to steal 4 plants. This is insane. It not only denies your opponent a greenery, it often just grants you a greenery. It's probably one of the most annoying cards you can play, and your friends will hate you if you hit them with this. So be prepared to destroy a few friendships if you play this with your buddies. But it's super good, especially because when the greens are in power, which is when you can play this card, greeneries grant a 4 MC rebate. Like, so this is even stronger then. It can trigger decomposers, ecozone, viral enhancers. It's just, I absolutely love this card, and I will absolutely hate it when someone hits me with it. But it's so amazing. I think this is one of the nicest new cards. It's just so devastating to get hit by this. I love it. I love it. I think it's really strong. Would put it in the same tier as virus. I think that should be A tier, something like that. It's super, super great. Like, I love this card. I cannot say the same thing about soil studies though. This costs 13 MC, has a max requirement of -4 degrees, comes with an event tag, plant tag, microbe tag, so great tags. And then it's basically a variation of greenhouses. It grants you plants, but not for cities, but for Venus tags, plant tags, and colonies. When we talked about Aphrodite in the past, we already noted that Venus and plant strategies just don't go well together. They don't make sense together. Venus is an engine strat that works well with science and is completely removed from the board game. And the board game is what plants focus on. So you won't have a lot of Venus tags and plant tags at the same time. Colonies, you will always have like 1 to 3. So this is not a huge factor. This costs 13 and cannot be made cheaper or cannot be paid for with steel like greenhouses can. Sure, it has useful tags, but I don't think this is great. It will maybe give you like in some cases this can get you like 15 plants in one go, which can be insane. But the max requirement is really annoying with this because the plant tags often have a higher requirement. Something like farming cannot factor into soil studies because farming has a higher requirement than soil studies allows you to play. So I don't like this card. I think it's not that great. Yeah, greenhouses, as I said, it's just much cheaper. You will get less plants out of it most of the time. But if you go for a lot of greeneries, you sometimes also play a lot of cities, so they combo well together. The Venus tags and the colonies do not combo that well together with placing a lot of greeneries and having a lot of plant tags. So yeah, don't think soil studies is very good. I would maybe place it in D tier. Red appeasement, really interesting card. So this costs 0. The reds need to be in power, or you need to have 2 delegates there. It's an event. It grants you 2 MC prod. So this is insane. Like, this is 6 MC cheaper than sponsors. But for that, you need the 2 delegates. And you immediately pass after this card. And it requires you that no other player has passed before. So you can only basically play this in a gen in which you don't have a lot to do. Because if you have a lot to do, you cannot play this early on because afterwards you immediately pass and cannot do your other actions that you want to do. But if you don't play it early on, you risk that the other players pass and then you can also not play it. But you also have only specific generations in which you can play it because it has this requirement. So it's really difficult to play, but has a pretty strong effect. The effect is not super impactful, like 2 MC for 0 is super good, but it's not crazy impactful, right? It's not like doing 3 heat bumps for 20, which would also be like a super good deal, but it would also be super impactful. This is a super good deal, but not that impactful, if you know what I mean. But again, it's a strong card if you can play it. It's just pretty hard to play. In Gen 1, it would be best to play, but it's hard to play because you need to place 2 delegates, and then no other player can pass in that time. So yeah. So you can try to get it down in Gen 1. And if you fail to do it, you can maybe get it down in Gen 2, but because then the Reds will probably be in power. Because you place 2 delegates there. But yeah. Or you still have your delegates there if the Reds didn't win. Interesting card, really interesting concept. Maybe C tier. Next up, we have Microgravity Nutrition, and I think I will do on-the-fly change here to my notes. Because I think this card is worse than what I thought first. So Microgravity Nutrition costs 11 MC, has a plant and a microbe tax. So again, nice tax. Comes with a point and gives you 1 MC for each colony that you own. So good tax for ecologist. The new ecologist seemingly still has all green tax and not just microbe tax, which is what we thought first. This is a mid-game card because you need colonies for this. But most of its value comes from MC prod, which is not that great in the mid-game anymore. Realistically, it never grants more than 3 or 4 prod. And like a point, wow, okay, that's like it's reminds me a little bit of Zeppelins, which you would love to play early because it grants prod, but early you won't get much prod out of it. And then late, it could maybe be used for banker swing, but it's also weaker than most other banker swings. Like, in contrast to Zeppelins, at least has 2 useful tags, but it most of the time also grants less prod, so it's even worse than Zeppelins as a banker swing. I think this is probably a D tier card. If it was not for the tax, it would be even lower. I really don't like it. I don't think this is a good one. Most of the new cards are quite strong. I think Microgravity Nutrition and what was the other one? Soil Studies. Okay, this one died for some reason, but I will put it on screen. Microgravity Nutrition and Soil Studies are 2 of the weaker ones. All right, let's get to L1 Trade Terminal. So L1 Trade Terminal, in my opinion, is one of the new OP cards. This one, I think, is absolutely busted. There were, I think, 2 cards so far in colonies that allowed you to increase the track by 1 step when trading. I will put them on screen right now. And those were quite nice. I think that was Trading Colony and then something else. They were pretty strong. L1 Trade Terminal takes this to the next level and allows you to increase the colony track 2 steps. That's absolutely busted. That's up to 7 MC more per trade, or up to 4 more steel if you trade for Ceres, for example. Also, you get 2 points, which is solid, and then 3 resources, which can be 3 more points, or even 4 more points if you have physics complex. Of course, the problem with that is you need 3 different cards that already have resources. So first of all, it doesn't work with Search for Life because only the first resource on door actually yields points. And having 3 cards with that collect resources also means that you can't play L1 Trade Terminal in the super early game, which is when you would benefit the most from this other effect that increases the colony tracks. Of course, playing this early on is also quite difficult because it's so expensive and a lot of its value also stems from points. So it's definitely a mid-game card. It's very expensive, but yeah, this effect is insane. It can yield an insane amount of points as well. I think this is crazy. This card is an S tier card in my opinion. It's insane. Trading is already busted, and with L1 Trade Terminal, it just takes it to the next level. Crazy card. Next up, Jovian Envoys, and there are a few cards like this in the game that require something, and then let you place delegates, and multiple delegates in fact. Jovian Envoys is an event card for 2 MC, requires 2 Jovian attacks, and then it allows you to place 2 delegates. As I said earlier when we discussed sponsoring nation, Jovian placing 2 delegates is really valuable for swings. So you can swing the party leader, you can swing the election, and especially on cheap cards, this is insane. Because if you only have 7 MC left and you're behind 2 delegates, your opponent will never expect you to overtake him. But with Jovian Envoys, that's possible, because you can place 2 delegates with Jovian Envoys and then buy 1 for 5. Or if you have Media Group and RIC and have a discount, you can even do it with 0 MC, because you play it for 0, you get 5 MC back, and then you buy another delegate. That is so unexpected that many opponents will not think it is possible and will lose the election because of that. And that can be really, really impactful. So yeah, Jovian Envoys, I think, is really strong because it's so cheap and it can be super influential. I think it's an A-tier card. Next up, Ishtar Expedition. This is similar to Stratospheric Expedition, I think was the name of it. Yeah, which we talked about earlier. Because it draws 2 Venus tags, so it helps immensely in Venus combo, but it also requires 10% Venus. So again, if you're not going for Venus, this is even worse, because you cannot play it most of the time, like only if someone else is going for Venus. But then again, we have the fact that if you're not going for Venus, you would rather draw 2 random cards instead of 2 Venus cards. It's a Venus event, not as good as a space event or a space Venus event, but still has some value. The cool thing about this card is though that it costs 6 plus 3 and it grants 3 titanium, so it basically pays for itself if you have a use for the titanium. And if you have advanced alloys or Unity is on power or you have Mercurian alloys, this is even cash positive if you have a use for the titanium. And then you should draw 2 cards on top. So it's quite strong. I like it more than Stratospheric Expedition, I think, because it just pays for itself and it's just a no-brainer. If you're going for Venus even just a little bit and this is playable, then I would definitely play it. It's just solid. Yeah. The only problem I see here is that the Venus tags more often than not cannot be paid for with titanium, because most Venus tags are not also space tags, but it's a good card. It's maybe low beat here, something like that. Next up, GHG Shipment. This is the new Calvinists card. So requires Calvinists in power, costs 3 MC, is a space event. It grants 1 heat prod and then 1 heat per floater that you have. The lower thing here, the 1 heat per floater, that just means it's one of the most insane thermalist swings ever. Like if you have a strong floater engine and absolutely no heat prod, but like you have, you're playing Celestic, you have Stratopolis, and what's it called? Floating Habs and dirigibles, you might end the game with like, and for example, if Titan is also in play, you might end the game with like 36 floaters on floating Habs. And then you draw this in the last draft, your opponent has banned a Thermalist and thinks to himself, well, that's an easy award. He doesn't have any heat prod and just a little bit of power prod. He will never win an award. Then you draw a GHG Shipment and you just turn that award on its head. Like, it's insane, the amount you can swing Thermalist with this card. Problem I see here is that for the heat prod, you would love to play it early on, and for the instant heat, you would love to play it late. But still a super solid card. It's because it's really, really cheap. With optimal air braking, it can even yield more heat. Like, it's situational. There are a lot of bad floater cards, but just the potential of being a Thermalist swing and also the cheap heat. Like, this costs the same amount as Micromills, if you think about it. Micromills also costs 3, has no tags, and it grants 1 heat prod, but like this one has tax and the bonus heat as well. Like that's just insane in comparison. Like playing this in the mid game for a heat and a little bit of for a heat prod and a little bit of instant heat, and then maybe paying for it with titanium is already worth it. So I think it's like a low B tier card. Next up, Frontier Town. This is the Mars First card, so again, requires Mars First in power or 2 delegates there. It's a city with the building tag. As many cities, it requires power prod, but it does not improve your economy. What it does is that you gain the printed placement bonus 3 times instead of 1 time. So here it says gain the printed placement bonus 2 additional times. So what first comes to mind, of course, are the insane placement bonuses, even on Elysium and Hellas, which is 3 plants, 3 cards, or the South Pole bonus. But on the new maps, you also get delegates, you get heat bumps, you get colonies. There are places where you can put this where you get like 2 steel and a titanium, and that times 3, so 6 steel, 3 titanium, stuff like that. And then the fact that it's one of the cheapest cities out there. Like, what cities are cheaper? I don't think there are any. Like Immigrant City and Corporate Stronghold are both more expensive, I think. Just check. They cost 13, and yeah, Immigrant City costs 13, Corporate Stronghold costs 12, I think. No, 11. Okay, Corporate Stronghold is as expensive, but minus 2 points is often a really big problem if you want to play it late. So this can be a very strong late game play for points because it's just so cheap. Of course, the power prod needs to be factored in, but we all know that. And if Mars First is in power, you already get 1 steel back. I don't think that placement bonus gets tripled because it's not a placement bonus. So this can be really, really strong. In the early game, with stuff like on Elysium, the 3 casts, the 3 plants, like if you place this on 3 plants, you get an instant conversion because it grants 9 plants. So that's really, really good. Yeah, it's one of the best late game cities, but it also can be insane early on, early and mid game with some of the best placement bonuses in the game. So yeah, B tier card, I would say. Next up, we have Floating Refinery. This costs 7 MC. Has a Venus tag. You get 1 floater here on the card for each Venus tag that you have. So at least you get 1 floater instantly because this is a Venus tag itself. And then it grants an action where you can add a floater to discard or remove floaters from any card, so discard or any other, to gain a titanium and 2 MC. The interesting thing here is that most cards do this exactly the other way around. So most cards allow you to add floaters to any card and then remove floaters from this card. So something like dirigibles allows you to place floaters wherever you want, including dirigibles, but it only allows you to remove dirigible floaters to lower the price of any card. Or stuff like aerial mappers, same thing. You can add floaters to any card, but only remove floaters from aerial mappers to draw cards. This one is the other way around. You need to add floaters to Floating Refinery if you use the upper action, but can remove floaters from any card to gain titanium and 2 MC. Most of the time, you will probably not want to do this, removing floaters from any other card, because floaters on other cards are often more valuable than on Floating Refinery. A titanium and 2 MC, 5 MC, you will often find more useful stuff to do with the floaters on other cards. Like removing 2 floaters from floating hubs is exchanging 1 VP for 5 MC in total with Floating Refinery, which is the fair price for a point. But you already paid money to put the floaters on floating hubs, so why should you do that? So the only thing I really see doing with Floating Refinery is playing this in the mid game when you have quite a few Venus tags already, and then just removing the floaters from Floating Refinery to gain MC and titanium. But the thing is, the card costs 10, in total to buy and play. You get the 5 MC equivalent per activation, but that also burns 2 floaters. So you need 4 floaters on here to be cash neutral, and only with 6 floaters are you cash positive. 6 Venus tags are quite hard to reach in the mid game, and you cannot do it in the late game because it takes time to remove the floaters. So I don't think it's that great. I would only play it if I have a lot of Venus tags early on. I can play this in the mid game and get a lot of money out of this. I would probably almost never use the lower action to remove floaters from other cards. Don't think that's worth it. But yeah, interesting concept because it's the first time this is switched around, but not that strong, I would say. All right, next up we have Envoys from Venus. Similar to Jovian Envoys, I think it was called. Yeah, Jovian Envoys. This has a tag requirement and then allows you to place 2 delegates. In contrast to Jovian Envoys, you need 3 tags instead of 2, but there are also more Venus tags than Jovian tags. Yeah, again, pretty good. I would place it in 8 here again. I don't think we need to talk about this for very long because I already talked about why it's so good with Jovian Envoys. I think Jovian Envoys might be a little better because even though there are less Jovian tags, they are just better and you more often play those than Venus tags. But yeah, strong card, 8 here in my opinion. Colonial representation. This is a card I really like because of the upper part here. The lower part, which says you get 3 MC per colony you have, is quite boring and is what they opted for with a lot of the new colony cards. You just get a rebate for trading or placing colonies or having colonies. I think that's quite boring, but this just means that the card will get cheaper in the mid to late game. But the effect up here incentivizes you to play this quite early because you want the influence quite early. And having extra influence is just nice. It softens the blow from negative events and just grants more payoff from positive events. So colonial representation, I think, is quite a good card. I like it less than event analysts because so the other card that grants influence because event analysts is just cheaper. So after 2 colonies, it costs roughly the same, but it lacks the science tag that event analyst has. So like it less than event analysts, but still quite good. Probably B tier. Colonial Envoys. This is roughly similar to the other cards that we saw. That allows you to place delegates because it has a requirement. Is a cheap event card, has a requirement, and it allows you to place delegates. But in fact, this is not based on a tag requirement, but this is the new Unity card. And it allows you to place multiple delegates. But you also get to split the delegates. That's one of the first cards that allows you to do this. I think there's also a prelude that allows you to do this, but I'm not quite sure. I need to check. If there is, I'll put it on screen right now. You get to place 1 delegate for each colony you have. Roughly 2 to 3 delegates, sometimes more, sometimes less. If it's 2 delegates, it's already good, pretty good in my opinion. If it's 3 delegates, it's insane. If it's more, it's completely busted. It's a good thing that you can place them in separate parties because if you have 4 or more colonies, then placing them in one party is just absurd and doesn't really do anything for you. So yeah, pretty strong. As same with the other ones, I would place this in 8 here. Probably the strongest one out of the bunch because we love colonies. But yeah. Next up, we have a weaker one again. This is Cloud Tourism. Costs 11, comes with a Jovian and Venus tag. There's a new milestone, I think, that requires 3 sets of the planetary tags. For that one, Cloud Tourism is quite nice. Then it allows you to add floaters to this card once per gen. Each float, 3 floaters are worth 1 point, so this action we know is quite weak. There are other cards in the game that function roughly similar, and they are not that strong. And then it grants you 1 MC for each pair of Earth and Venus tags that you have. So if you have 3 Earth tags and 0 Venus tags, you get 0 MC prod out of this, and that's the problem. You need both Earth and Venus tags, and that's not a given. And the action up here and the tags, you want them early on, but early on you won't have a lot of pairs of Earth and Venus tags. That's the problem with this card and a lot of other cards. Like the one part of the card incentivizes you to play it early and the other card incentivizes you to play it late. Also, this is split in the middle again because you want MC prod early, but early on you won't have enough of these tags. So when are you going to play this card? Difficult decision, and I think it's not that great. The tags are useful, but it's hard to get a lot of prod out of this, and the action sucks. It's D tier in my opinion. None of these cards are straight up F tier, but some of them are also just not that great. And lastly, for the regular Prelude 2 cards, we have Ceres Tech Market. This costs 12 MC, comes with a space tag and a science tag. And it's pretty interesting because it allows you to discard any number of cards from your hand to gain 2 MC for each discarded card. So you can do this once per gen, obviously, because it's an action. So that means you give up a lot of stalling power because selling cards individually is what you want to do if you want to stall. So if you want your opponent to pass so that you can do a chain of actions that is very beneficial, for example, get a milestone or get a bonus bump or whatever. And you give that up by selling multiple cards at the same time, but you get double the amount of money out of this. That also means that buying cards for free and just speculating on them is less punishing, because if they are not what you want in the end, you can just sell them for 2 MC, and so you only make 1 MC loss on each bought card. You also get a rebate for each colony you own. This will never make the card, except if you have a lot of discounts, which can definitely happen because it has a space tag. But if you don't have any discounts, this will never make the card cash positive because it costs 12 plus 3. And even if in a 5-player game, you will, especially in a 5-player game because they are quick, but you will never have that many colonies. But it certainly can make the card more cheaper, and that is quite nice. But yeah, this action up here is quite useful, especially for engine setups that draw a lot of cards anyways, because if you draw cards for free from stuff like Development Center, AI Central, or even trading to Pluto, then this up here is just straight up cash that you earn, and that's really, really nice. So in general, the tags up here, the point, the action, the rebate, all of this adds together to form quite a strong card in my opinion. It's super, super, super useless in Rush, because in Rush, one of the most important things you gotta learn is, and that's definitely something that I still need to learn, or learn better, is not to overbuy, not to buy too many cards. You will, in Rush setups, play with the least amount of cards possible, and you will never be, like, it will never be a good play to play Ceres Tech Market in that circumstance, because it does nothing for a Rush, and it also does, like, it doesn't terraform, and then the action that you get also does nothing for you because you will not have enough cards for this to pay off. So this is super useful in engine setups with card draw, and super useless, like one of the worst cards in Rush setups. So in that way, it's kind of average, but I would still put it in B tier because it's a menace in the draft. Like, if you're rushing against an engine opponent with a lot of card draw, Ceres Tech Market might be just what they need, and you will definitely have to cut it. And therefore, I think Ceres Tech Market should land in B tier, something like that. And that's it with the true Prelude 2 cards. Next up, I'll talk about the Prelude 2 promo cards. So if you buy Prelude 2 in retail when it comes out, you won't get those that I will talk about in a minute. But I bet at some point they will release on the Fricks Game Store, and maybe you also back the game on Kickstarter and then you already own them. So yeah, let's place a small cut here and then let's see you in a second. All right, quick change in lighting, because when I recorded the first part of the video, I didn't realize how long I was going already. So I had to stop there and resume recording a little bit later in the day. But we're getting to the promo project card now. And the first one is Aqueduct Systems. So this costs 9 plus 3, so 12 in total. If you subtract 5 MC for the point, you draw 3 cards for 7 MC. And you also get a building tech, which can have some value for builder and contractor, and of course you can pay for this with steel, which can make it really, really nice in the late game if you are looking for steel dumps, especially like if you're swimming in steel. It's also a really good card for planner because it's plus 2 cards, which is something not a lot of cards can do. For example, an SP Ocean on Tharsis, or the Convoy from Europa on Tharsis can do that as well. The problem here with Aqueduct Systems is the requirement. A city next to an ocean is something that doesn't happen that often in the early game. At the end of the game, it will probably, in like 90% of cases, happen. There are good city spots on most maps that touch at least one ocean. On Tharsis, for example, in the east, or on Elysium on the 3 planets. On Hellas, it could be a little bit more difficult to have a city next to an ocean at the end of the game. But yeah, this is something that most of the time prevents you from playing this very early on, but it's nonetheless not a card that you want to play early on, or that you really need to play early on. It's more something for the mid to late game when you're swimming in steel and are looking for building techs. If you're not swimming in steel, this card is not that great, because on average I think building techs are worse than normal cards, especially with all expansions. So yeah, I would say this is probably a C tier card. If you're swimming in steel and you can play this in the late game, it's definitely one of the best cards you can find, because not only does it grant a point for a little bit of steel, you also will likely find more targets. But yeah, a lot of building techs are also better in the early to mid game, and that could also be something that prevents this card from being really top tier. But next up, we come to one of the most interesting cards of the promo set, which is Astra Mechanica. And this one, in my opinion, is pretty busted. It's not like super great in all cases, but there are cases where this is absolutely crazy. I think it's one of the most game-breaking cards I've seen in a while. And yeah, why is that the case? Well, it can allow you to play some of the absolute strongest cards in the game twice for full effect again. And that's just insane. Giant Ice Asteroid, Imported Nitrogen, CEO's favorite project, Indentured Workers, Last Convoy, the original version of Deimos Down. Stuff like that is crazy if you play it twice. Yeah, it's insane. I had this in the 4 rounds I played. I had this twice already, and each time it felt like I was breaking the rules of the game, and my opponents were really annoyed by me playing this. Both times I played Imported Nitrogen twice, and that card is just an insanely well-scoring card, especially if you have some discounts or have some titanium left over, and in long games that is definitely possible. One thing I want to highlight is its funny interaction with Lawsuit. So Lawsuit, if you don't know the card because it's not in the Steam variant yet, is a card that you play that you can play once you've been hit by some hate card, and it's an event card that grants or that lets you steal money and then ends up in the event pile of your opponent and will then give that opponent a negative point. But if that opponent then plays Astra Mechanica, he can pick up Lawsuit into his hand again and play it himself. So that's pretty funny. He could even do that in the same turn that you played Lawsuit on him because he already lost resources in that round. So yeah, this is really a really fun interaction. And yeah, there are definitely situations in which Astra Mechanica does absolutely nothing for you. A lot of events do not want to get played twice. Something like ICS, for example, it does nothing if you play it twice. You shouldn't do it because you lose the points once you pick it up on hand again. But with some cards, this is absolutely busted, and for this reason, and like with some of the best cards in the game that you want to play anyways, this is absolutely busted. So I think Astra Mechanica is an S tier card. I think it's absolutely game breaking. Next up, we have Carbon Nanosystems, and this one I'm really not that sure. I haven't played it myself yet. I haven't really seen it in action yet as well. Basically, it gives you a 4 MC rebate on each science tag if you can make use of these resources. So if you can play space or city tags afterwards. This is also one of the first cards that specifically references city tags and not cities themselves, which doesn't make that much of a difference here, but well. Science tags and space tags in particular already work well together because a few science tags give space discounts and a few space tags have science tags, and science tags are usually a long-range strat, while space discounts that are not space events, space tags that are not space events are also long-range centered. So that works well together. City tags, well, yeah, probably also as well. I think this card in general is a bit pricey, but the building tag definitely helps with playability. It can make it a good mid-game card if you have some steel left over. I think it's a good card for engine. It's not great for rush because you won't be playing a lot of science tags, and you definitely won't be playing a lot of space or city tags. Well, you will be playing some space tags, space events for sure. But yeah, I don't think it's great for rush, definitely. I think, and once again, I'm really not sure with this card, but I think I would place it in C tier. But yeah, don't quote me on that. So next up we have Siberia Systems. So this basically is an alternative version or a cranked up version of Robotic Workforce. The problem with this card is that often it's already kind of difficult to find a good target for Robotic Workforce because there are quite a few cheap building tags that you don't want to copy with Robotic Workforce. Something like Mine or Titanium Mine. Why would you copy that with Robotic Workforce? Because robotics cost more than them. Unless you really need the science tag, it doesn't make sense. And here you need 2 good building tags to copy. Of course, you could copy like a really good one and then a mediocre one, and it would still be kind of good value. Because, yeah, for 19, getting a steel prod, some really good production, and then an okay production is still quite good value if you can get this early on, can get this down early on. But there's another problem here. This only offers production, has no tag, which makes it kind of hard to play. And then you already need to have 2 production cards played to play this. This is kind of overkill. Like, you get so much production with this when you already have production. So there are certainly situations where you would want this, but they are kind of specific, and you need this card really early on and have these other cards played already. So definitely difficult. But of course, it can be ridiculously good. Like 1 steel prod, then let's say you copy MATLAB with 8 building tags, 4 MC prod, and then you also copy more whole area for another 4 heat prod. That for 19 That's insane. Like that is crazy payoff. But yeah, that's a very specific circumstance. And in a lot of other circumstances, like a lot of building techs just don't grant you production or grant you bad production. And copying them is either not possible or not preferable. And yeah, this just makes Siberia systems very, yeah, niche, let's say it like that. I would probably give it a low C tier or even high D tier ranking. It can definitely be insane, but it's really, really niche. But next up, a card that I don't think is that niche, Herotic Order of Mars. So basically, it has a max requirement of 4% oxygen, costs 10 MC, grants 2 MC prot, and then gives you a rebate of 1 MC per empty area adjacent to your own tiles. If you get 4 MC back, this has the same MC to prot ratio than as sponsors. 4 MC back is quite easily achievable with 1 tile. Just place a tile early on, even on the edge of the map, it's possible to get 4 MC back. It lacks the Earth tech that sponsors has, so it's still worse than sponsors if you do it like that. But with a tile that is surrounded by 6 empty tiles, and empty oceans count, I tested this, if you can believe the tabletop simulator, but I guess it makes sense. With 6 MC back, this is already a really good deal. 4 MC for 2 MC prot is really good. If you have like 2 tiles on Mars with 6 empty areas surrounding them each, this is already cash positive, not if you include the price of buying the card, but it can pay back, it can relatively easily pay back more money than you spent on it. And then also grant 2 MC prot, which is quite good. But of course, you need to play it early on. It has a max requirement, meaning that you cannot play this in the late game for an insane payback, for an insane instant payback. So it cannot get often it cannot get completely ridiculous, but yeah, it's a good card, I would say. If you see this in the early game, I would almost always pick this up. Early tile placement cards like Restricted Area, Nuke Zone, Natural Preserve are really good, and they combo really well with Herotic Order of Mars. Cards that combo well with good cards are really good. So I think Herotic Order of Mars is again high C tier or even low B tier. I really like this card. It's one of the few good cards with no text, which I think this expansion has provided a few of, and also some combo potential for them. So I like that. Next up, another really cool one, Homeostasis Bureau. I think this one is really interesting. Costs 16, has a building tech, grants 2 heat prot, and then a rebate of 3 MC each time you increase the temperature. I guess if you do demos down, this grants 9 MC payback, which is crazy. If you play this early on, it's super good for Rush. Like, it's just 7 MC more expensive than Import of Advanced GHG, which is an okay card to play early on. And that means after 3 temperature bumps, this paid back and was better than Import of Advanced GHG, basically. So yeah, this falls off quite fast though. So if you get this in a mid to late game, it's basically worthless. It does not grant any points, no instant payback. It's just too expensive to be played later. But again, if you get this early on, it's super good. As a Rush player, I would always play this. As an engine player, I don't know if you're going for like a mid-game strat, it's definitely also worth a play. I think again, low B tier, something like that. Low B tier is something that you cannot say about Kaguya tech though. This one is crazy. I don't know what they thought about this card when they designed it. It costs 10 MC, grants a city and a plant tech. Interesting combo. I think we never had this in any of the expansions. grants 2 MC prod and a card. So this is already just 1 MC prod less than Acquired Company, but has 2 tags, one of them being the best tag in the game, or the second best tag in the game, and it draws you a card. So this is already as good or roughly as good as Acquired Company. And then it lets you remove a greenery of yours. It has to be one of your greenery tiles. This does not affect the oxygen, so it cannot prevent the game from ending like this. And replace that greenery tile with a city tile. You can ignore city placement restrictions, and this is what makes it insane. Because just think about you doing an ocean walk, and then your opponent plopping down a city next to your greeneries, profiting off of your greenery points. And suddenly you don't want to place cities around, greeneries around there anymore, because you don't want to just gift him points. Well, just play Kaguya tech, replace one of your greeneries with a city. Suddenly he loses a point because there's one less greenery next to a city, and you can freely convert greeneries around next to your city. This can seriously score so many points, and this effect is basically free because the rest of the card is already fine as is, as I explained earlier. It's so similar to like Acquired Company with a few little changes. 2 tags instead of 1 tag being really good, the other tag being at least rare, which is great for diversifier, drawing a card. This is already fine. And then you get this, which can score so many points. Sometimes it's also not that great, because a greenery in and of itself already scores a point. So like if you only have 1 greenery on the board, there's nothing else there, then this is -1 point, because you lose a greenery which scores a point and get a city which scores nothing. But if you have multiple greeneries, and you, like even if you just have 3 greeneries in a straight line, and you replace one of those greeneries, the one in the middle, you lose 1 point by losing the greenery, but you gain 2 by placing the city in between your greeneries. So that is already pretty good. So I think Kaguya tech is absolutely busted. And yeah, it's crazy. I think this is an S tier card. So yeah, I think in the late game you can always play this card for quite a few points. In the mid game, it's also great. Just in the early game, you won't have like really good scenarios for this. But as soon as you have a greenery down, you can theoretically play it for the development and place your greeneries around it. So yeah, I think this is insane. So let's get to the next one, which is Mars Nomads, which is also really interesting. I think this is a very creative card. So what it does is it lets you place a gold cube on a non-reserved empty area on the game board. That area is from then on an area where no one can place a tile. But once per turn, you can move that gold cube to an adjacent non-reserved empty area and gain the placement bonus there, as if placing a tile. And as I understand it, the first placement, the one down here, the one that you get instantly without doing the action, doesn't grant you the placement bonus, but you can move it instantly because you can always do the action in the turn that you play the card, and that one will then gain you the placement bonus. What I don't know is, will this also grant ocean rebates? Because that would make the card so much better. That would make the card really good. And even without ocean rebates, this can be insane on some maps. Like on Elysium, for example, can repeatedly get the 3 cards, for example. That would be crazy. Or on Hellas, repeatedly get the South Pole bonus. And on the new maps, there are other bonuses that you can get, which are really good. Then this would be insane. But this can relatively easily be countered by opponents, because you move the cube onto the 3 cards, you gain the 3 cards. The next turn, you move them off of the 3 cards again, the cube, to an adjacent tile, gain that placement bonus, and then the 3 cards are not reserved anymore, and someone can place a tile there, and then you can't move there anymore. Cannot get the 3 cards again. And because you cannot reserve the area, because it needs to be a non-reserved area, you can also not just place land claim on there, for example, and then move there with the Mars nomads over and over again. So you can get counterplayed by your opponents. They could theoretically also surround your gold cube completely, and then I think you cannot move it anymore. But most of the time that's pretty unrealistic. But yeah, I think again this is a card which falls off really fast because in the late game, first of all, this is basically just production. Either it's card draw or production. Secondly, it doesn't grant anything else. No instant bonuses except for the instant placement bonus when you move the cube. And also it's quite expensive. It cannot be paid for with any minerals and so on. So I think this is an early to mid game card, which is very creative. In the late game, you won't have time for it to pay off, and also most of the good spots will already be blocked. So I like it for the early game, maybe B tier or C tier. I'm not quite sure. I haven't played with it so far. One of my opponents once had it, but I'm not quite sure how strong this is yet. But I like the concept. It's really, really interesting. Next up, we have Martian Lumber Corp, and I'm quite certain that this card is not that great. So it has a cost of 6 MC, offers a building and a plant tech, which are 2 great techs. It requires that you have 2 greeneries already, which can be a hefty requirement, so it's not really playable in the super early game, which is a bummer because the techs would be great in the early game. And it also grants a plant prod. And it also has an effect which says when playing a building tech, plants may be used as 3 MC each. So the techs and the plant products alone are actually already good enough for this card to be okay for 6 MC. The only problem here is the requirement. 2 greeneries are kind of hard to get down in the early game, and then in the mid to late game, this card is just not influential enough. If you just look at cost, tax, and the prod down here, to be a super great play. So everything except the effect is okay if it wasn't for the requirement. So you look to the effect and hope that that one makes up for the high requirement. But I would not like to use my plants as basically minerals to pay for building tax. First of all, building techs in the mid to late game are often kind of underwhelming. They often focus on production or card draw, and that loses in value the longer the game goes on. And secondly, plants are really valuable. I think I would value a plant over 3 MC. If you think about Electrocat, for example, if you can, you always sell the steel, you never sell the plant. So yeah, I wouldn't want to use and that's 7 MC, not 3. So I wouldn't want to use my plants as a resource to play building techs. Of course, you can play this later on when you're already swimming in greenery in plants or whatever. But yeah, I don't see the use case for this effect up here. I really don't see it. So the plant prod and the tags are already okay, but the requirement makes it kind of bad, and the effect doesn't make up for the requirement. I would probably put this in D tier. Maybe I'm too harsh on this because, yeah, again, plant prod and tags are quite nice, so maybe it should be C tier. But yeah, the effect is just underwhelming. Next up, Neptunian Power Consultants. I've seen already in a game that I played how insanely strong this can be. And one of my opponents played it when no oceans were down, and he got all of the value out of it, and it was crazy. So it costs 14, only has a power tag, And the effect says when any ocean is placed, you may spend 5 MC, steel may be used, to raise your energy production one step and add one hydroelectric resource here. And the hydroelectric resources are worth 1 point. So whenever an ocean is placed by anyone, you can pay 5 MC, including steel, to get 1 point and a power production. Power production is something that is worth it to get even in a late game to pay for power-hungry cards. So it's not something like MC, steel, or titanium production that you need to get early on. It's something that can be useful in the late game. So even if all oceans get placed later on, this can still pay off quite nicely. Of course, you would want to get the power production early still, because then the power, even if you cannot use it to play power-hungry cards because you don't have any, can be used as heat. So playing this and then following it up with oceans yourself early on is definitely nice. It's a steel sink, which is nice. And it can grant you an insane amount of power. So if you play this before any oceans are played, you can get 9 points for in total 62 MC, because you pay 45, that's 9 times 5, plus 17, 14 plus 3, that's 62 MC. So that's 6.9 MC for 1 power prod and a point. That's a good deal, but it's the best case scenario. At 6, if you only get the value out of 6 oceans, it's 7.8 MC. At 3 oceans, it's 10.7 MC per point in power prod. Power prod roughly costs 7 MC if you compare it to power plant. Points cost 5 MC. So already at 3 oceans, it's in theory a better deal than getting a point and a power prod on its own, because that's 12 MC together in the 3 oceans. You pay 10.7 MC with Neptunium Power Consultants. But with Neptunium Power Consultants, you cannot fully control when you get that power prod, and that definitely is a problem. So yeah. Also, problem is power prod is better early on, points are better later on. So again, there's a slight problem here. But yeah, I think it's still a good card. It can be insane, but it's also kind of niche. I think it might be like C tier, but it can definitely be better. One problem is if, let's say, you have no money left at the end of a gen, and then one of your opponents places an ocean, you just cannot use this effect. And that's definitely a problem. Next up, we have red ships. This card is really good. It costs 2 MC, has a requirement of 4% oxygen to be reached. And it has an action that says gain 1 MC per city and special tile adjacent to ocean, regardless of owner. So this card is super cheap. The requirement really is not a problem, because special tiles and cities next to oceans are placed later on anyways. Like in the super early game, there won't be a lot of special tiles and special tiles and cities next to oceans anyways. And I feel like this is just a much better version of Martian Rails. Martian Rails only count cities on Mars, no matter where they're placed. Okay, that's true. But this counts cities on Mars next to oceans and special tiles on Mars next to oceans. And special tiles are often placed because a lot of special tiles are pretty good, and they are often placed next to oceans because you want to connect ocean rebates with them. Cities are not that often placed next to oceans, because the more oceans are surrounding a city, the less points out of greeneries you can get with that city, except with capital. So yeah, if drawn for free, red ships, even after 1 usage, almost always pays off. So even in the late game, this is pretty good. If you get this in the mid game and can use it each gen, not only is it a stall action, but it will grant you a lot of money, I would say. So I think this is B tier, maybe even A tier. I really like this card. I think it's really, really strong. Let's get to the strongest card, I think, of this expansion, which is Solar Logistics. I don't know what they thought when they designed this card. This is absolutely busted. This is insane. I don't know if there is a card in the game which is so strong. I would say Astra Mechanica was the most game-breaking card this expansion offered, but this is the most overpowered one. It just does so much. So it costs 20. That's the perfect amount for a credit card rebate, by the way. It has an Earth tag that triggers Earth Office, Point Luna, and Director. Space tag can be paid for with titanium. It grants 2 instant titanium, so in reality it only costs 40, not 20, if you can make use of this titanium. Also, if you're playing with all expansions, Unity is bound to be in power sometime, and then this is even better. It grants a point, so we can subtract this from 14. Suddenly the card only costs 9 plus 3. It grants you a discount on Earth tax of 2 MC. So if we say this costs 9 plus 3, after 6 Earth tax, after Solar Logistics is played, this card is free, basically. And then, when any player plays a space event, you draw a card. Space events are some of the best cards in the game, especially the base game space events. So your opponents will be disincentivized to play the best cards in the game. And if you play them, you get extra cards. This is busted. This is crazy. This is insane. First of all, it has so much combo potential. It combos with, as I said, Director, Credit Core, Point Luna, Vitor. It can be paid for with titanium. It combos with Advanced Alloys, Unity, Mercurian Alloys. It grants an Earth discount. It grants you free card draw. It's busted. I had this once, and I think it drew me 7 cards. Gave me a discount on 4 or 5 Earth tags. This is crazy. I think they just messed up with this card. It's insane. This is the Earth cat of this expansion. This is crazy. Next up, because we need to get through these last 2 cards, is St. Joseph of Cupertino Mission. And I don't know what to think of this card. This is super weird. Cost 7, has no tag. It grants you an action to spend 5 MC, same as with Neptunium Power Consultant. You can also use steel for that. To place a cathedral marked by a silver cube on a city tile, no matter which city tile. And you can only place 1 per city. The city owner may pay 2 MC that moment you place it to draw 1 card. And then for each cathedral that you get down, you get a point. Let's think about something. Let's think about Security Fleet. We all hate Security Fleet. It's a bad card. With that one, that costs 12, I think. And you pay basically 3 MC to get a point. Here you pay 5 MC to get a point. And if the city is not your own, then the owner can even buy a card for relatively cheaply. If the city is your own, then yes, you get to buy a card relatively cheaply, but you also pay 7 MC to get a point on the card. And how many cities will you realistically have? I think if you have like 3 or 4 cities down in the mid game, it can definitely maybe happen with Tharsis or like Mining Guild, and you draw this, and you also have a lot of steel, then it can definitely be worth it to play, because it will grant you a few points and a few cards and a way to spend your steel. But if you don't have any cities, this card is absolutely atrocious. Like, I wouldn't want to place the silver cubes on my opponent's cities. So yeah, I don't really know what to make of this card. I have to say I haven't played with it yet. But yeah, I think it's quite underwhelming. I would probably give it a D tier. Maybe even F tier. But again, the case where you are swimming in steel and have a few cities down, in that case, it's actually pretty good. So probably D tier, low D tier. And lastly, we have Tesseract. And in my opinion, this is a mix between Soul Factory and Equatorial Magnetizer, but it's the worst of both worlds. So Soul Factory at least is a cheap point and some plant prod in the late game if you have leftover steel and power prod. This is more expensive, so it's not a cheap point. So it's not so good as a late game steel dump. Equatorial Magnetizer, on the other hand, has the potential to score quite a bit if you have tons of power prod left over, maybe after playing Mass Converter, if you play Equatorial Magnetizer quite early on. This doesn't score actively, like you only get plant prod out of it. It only scores 1 point. So I just think this is an F tier card. I would maybe never play this, I think. I haven't seen it in game yet because I haven't drawn it and no one else has played it, and I'm not wondering why. I really don't like this card. So I think it's quite weak. But yeah, those were all of the Prelude 2 and Prelude 2 promo project cards. There will definitely be 2 more videos like this discussing the corps and the preludes. And after that, I will make some other content about Prelude 2 as well. I'm not quite sure yet what yet. But yeah, I really hope you enjoyed this video. I would really love to see your opinions on these cards in the comments. So if you disagree with me on some of the cards and think I have missed the potential of some of them or I overvalue some of them, and then please let me know in the comments. And I would also really appreciate if you could like the video and subscribe. And yeah, thanks for your continued support and have a good one, guys. See you.